Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. Now, if you're listening for the first time, I'd like to take just a minute to introduce myself. I've spent my entire career in technology. I started off as a programmer right out of college, worked my way up to senior leadership roles in technology organizations, managing teams across the US, Europe, and Asia. Now, after 35 years in technology, I left those corporate roles behind to become a full-time coach and consultant. So now I help leaders accelerate their growth, both for themselves personally and for their organizations, while creating a workplace for their teams to thrive. In this episode, I'll be sharing strategies with you for how to position yourself for the promotion that you really want. Now, I always like things to be practical, actionable, straightforward. So the three strategies I want to dive into are really a step-by-step of if I were in your shoes, I had my eye on a promotion I really wanted, this is exactly the steps in sequence that I would take. So strategy number one, and this is where you're going to hear my, tech background come into play here. The first thing I want you to do, your first strategy, is to perform a gap analysis. Look at the position that you really want. What would be your responsibilities? What are the qualifications? What are the problems that you'd have to solve? How would you be evaluated? What's the contribution you'd need to make? What would success look like? You really need to do a thorough analysis of what that higher level role would be. So the gap analysis is then taking an honest look at where are you today and what's the gap between your experience, qualifications, background, skills, strengths, talents, right? What's the gap between what you bring to the role and what the role requires? This gap becomes part of a later strategy on an action plan. But now when you're thinking about the gap, now I'll tell you, so many people I've spoken with through the years, it's unclear. It's a mystery. They're really trying to imagine, what that gap is. They don't really know. And often, sometimes the company, doesn't provide the guidance. So just want to tell you a quick story of probably one of my first experiences with this. I was working at a very large global technology company. I was new to the company and I was managing a group of programmers. And they were mostly men. And there was one programmer, a young woman, who wanted to become a senior programmer. And actually, she might have even been the most experienced person in the group, just in terms of number of years. Anyway, she asked me, Donna, what are the requirements for me to become a senior programmer? She was like, I've been trying for a long time, but I'm feeling really discouraged because it's not clear what I have to do differently. I feel like I'm already operating at that level. Now, what I did was what I would hope every manager would do. I went to, HR and said, you have job descriptions, what's the job description for where she is today, where she wants to be, what's that gap? Right? And I sat down with her. I was probably the first manager to do this with her. I sat down with her and showed her in black and white what was the difference between where she was and where she wanted to be. I showed her that gap and I said, here are the, 4 or 5 things you need to demonstrate. And once you demonstrate those things, that will show me you're ready for the promotion. So I assigned a couple of really big projects to her and she was very successful, but it was clear to me that what had been happening up until I was working with her, that all of the reasons why she hadn't been promoted, many of them had to do with personality. She wasn't mixing with the other group. They didn't particularly care for her. She had a different personality, different style. The guys outnumbered her, and she was really a lone wolf at that time. And, it was discouraging. And they never thought she had her technical skills or her project management skills were good enough. The reality was they were good enough, right? In my eyes, I felt like she didn't have the clarity and the guidance, the direction. But anyway, the good news was she got the promotion. Now, I'm sharing that example because that happened, fairly early in my career, but it stayed with me all through the years that anytime somebody asked me, Donna, I'm a manager, I want to become a director. I had another manager, this was many years later, wanted to be promoted from manager to director. And he thought, based on how many years he'd been in his role and how long he'd been at the company, that he was ready. Why aren't I being promoted to director? Well, the reality is that a promotion is supposed to, and you probably know this, is supposed to be for greater responsibility. Not only more responsibility, but greater complexity. So what's the difference between where you are today and where you want to be? What is that gap? And that's until you can get your arms around that, you would be like that programmer, right? Who was sort of operating in the dark, didn't have the guidance or direction on what to do to show she was ready. So the first strategy of performing a gap analysis, may take a little bit of detective work. It depends on your company, your culture, your boss. But the first thing is get a copy of the job description, right? And this could be your boss could give it to you, or maybe it's something that HR needs to give you. Maybe it's on a company website, but you want to get your hands on a job description. So for example, where I said, somebody going from manager, director, executive director in one company I work for, we had a document that clearly delineated what were the difference between the levels. And you could see going from being more local to being more global. You could see the complexity, working more cross-functionally across many organizations, much more visibility. So until you see something in black and white, or your boss can give you that clarity, it's going to be hard for you to know how well have you prepared yourself for it. The second step could be have a conversation with your boss, right? And you can simply ask the question, how do I need to grow or develop in order to earn this promotion, whatever the title is? Or what do I need to do differently to earn this next promotion? It can be a really simple, open-ended question. And see what your boss has to say, right? Your boss should be able to say and articulate a couple of things that will tell you, your boss's understanding of your skills, your strengths, your ability, your contribution, the results that you get, right? And that's your boss's job. That's his responsibility to tell you what you need to do more of. Now, in my consulting and my coaching and as chief people officer at a software company, I have done a lot of talent reviews and succession planning with the CEOs and the C-suite executives. And we would go through the entire organization from top to bottom. Who's ready for promotion, what they have to do to get the next level, what their growth path is, etc. And every leader has at the tip of their tongue something they know that each individual needs to learn or grow or develop. They do know. Now, the sad part is they don't always tell their teams what they need to improve or develop. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but it can sometimes be a bit of a mystery. So my natural inclination is your boss should know exactly what you need to get that promotion. The problem I usually see is the individual doesn't have the benefit of that information. And the individual in this case is you. So ask. And it's a great conversation, right? Because that could point to something your boss needs to see more of in you. Okay? We'll talk about that in a minute. The other part of this gap analysis can be observe others who are in the same type of role. For those who are successful, they're effective, people really respect them, they look up to them. What are they doing? What are they doing differently? What can you learn from them? Are there stressful situations that they handle with great ease? Maybe they've got high emotional intelligence, so they're able to navigate through shark-infested waters, and they do it with grace and style and ease and humor. What is it that they are doing? You're you, right? I want you to always be authentic, but by observing others, you can see what is it they're being expected to do? What are their responsibilities? And if I were in their shoes, would I be ready? Would that be a role that I actually want? Okay, so that leads me to the next strategy. So once you finish your gap analysis, the next strategy is evaluate how that role will leverage your strengths. For example, maybe the role requires somebody who is really an expert at managing or driving change. And that might be precisely what you bring to the table. You're really good at it. You're probably one of the best people, in your organization to do that. Fantastic. But evaluate everything that you feel is required for that role, for that promotion, and what you bring to the table. And it's really twofold. One, will you enjoy doing it? What good is the promotion if once you get it, you're now spending all of your time doing things that you don't enjoy, you're not good at, you're out of your comfort zone, and you're sort of longing for the days when you used to be able to do what you love. That would be a very sad situation. You would have climbed the corporate ladder only to discover that the position you're in is possibly making you miserable, right? Because what's going to happen if you end up in that role and it doesn't play to your strengths, and now you've got that spotlight on you because you just got promoted? That will create tremendous stress because you're constantly going to be feeling as though you're either not enjoying what you're doing or you lack the confidence that you're getting your best results. Okay, so that's crucial that you evaluate how the role will play to your strengths. And I'll just give you an example from my own background. Several years ago, my company, which was a global technology company, they sent me to Asia to lead the region for my organization. And what they really needed was talent management. They needed somebody, and I was actually in client services, but they needed somebody who could make sure we had the right people in the right places with the right skills and just really create the organization across 7 countries. So it was all about the people. Now, one of my passions for so long has been developing people to grow in their careers, help them reach their full potential. It was not only a strength of mine, but it was a passion. So I love doing it. So if they had been looking for somebody who was an expert in our products, right, an expert in our technology, they wouldn't have picked me because that wasn't what I was known for. My personal brand, my authentic personal brand, was around people, creating high-performance teams, developing people to grow, coaching and mentoring the leaders so that they could grow with the organization. That's what I love doing. So for you, what are your natural strengths and talents? How will you leverage them in this role? Okay, so be honest with yourself. For example, if the role requires you to give presentations at industry conferences, right, where you might be speaking to a group of 2,000 people, how comfortable are you with those scenarios, right? If you love being in the spotlight, you love presenting, you love creating the presentation, delivering it, feeling the energy of the audience, it's something where you really shine, fantastic. But just think to yourself in advance, how much time are you going to be spending doing what you love versus the things you're really not very good at, right? And be honest with yourself, because again, if you get into a role that's not a good fit, that could actually cause more damage to your career than if you hadn't gotten the promotion to begin with. So you just got to be really careful that when you step into a role, you feel confident, excited, enthusiastic, eager. You want to be clear, yes, if I get this role, I'm going to be able to really exercise my talents. Now, another aspect of evaluating your contribution, your strengths, is thinking about relationships, because the higher up you go in the organization, if you're a leader, you'll know this. It's about relationships. So how confident are you and how much time and effort do you put into building relationships? In this new position, will you need to develop stronger relationships with clients, with top tier clients, with board members, right? With your investors. What are you bringing forward around your relationship skills? Because the higher up you go, not only is your emotional intelligence more important, but building and nurturing those relationships becomes crucial to your success, because the higher up you go, you're not the one doing all the work, right? You've got to collaborate with people, and they will need to trust you and feel extremely confident in your relationship in order for them to support you in that role. So that will be key. And this is important. I would say it's important in any role, but the higher up you go, the more crucial that becomes a part of the decision-making process, right? So let's say, for example, you work for the CEO, or you want to work for the CEO, you're one level down. But if the CEO doesn't believe that you've got those relationship skills to really develop the bond with the other executives that report into them, that might be something that would be taken into consideration, because the CEO needs the C-suite to be a really strong, cohesive team. And again, it depends on your work culture, your environment. Are you all geographically together or dispersed? Are you global? So there's a lot of factors involved. But the key point there is evaluating your strengths and what you bring to the table and how it's going to connect to the success that you would have in that role. Now, the third and final strategy is to create an action plan to address what we've just uncovered, right? When you did the gap analysis, right? Your boss told you, I could really see you at the next level, but what I need you to do is, right, and fill in the blanks. Need to see that you can handle the tough decision making, the presentations to our top clients, whatever it is, right? Your boss may have something that he or she needs to see you demonstrate. You could have gotten this information from a number of sources, okay? So your action plan can be simply, what are the steps you need to take so that you can make your abilities and the results that you're getting visible to both your boss and your colleagues, right? Let's say if your boss needs to see you be more adaptable with change, more conscientious, adaptable, have greater finesse, expertise, comfort with introducing change and managing change. Maybe that's something that your boss has identified for you. Okay, so what are the opportunities coming up for you to target that particular skill or capability, go through that project and demonstrate both your abilities and show the results that you're able to achieve. Make it visible to your boss, make it visible to your colleagues. Now, one thing I want to say about making things visible is it's very, very common. I've seen this with certainly many of my clients, and I've seen it in my own corporate career. You may or may not be comfortable shining a spotlight on your own contributions, right? You may be reluctant to shine the spotlight on yourself. You may be really, really comfortable shining the spotlight on your team, but when it comes to yourself, you might shy away from it, feeling like you don't want to be bragging or boasting or making it all about you. But the reality is, you do have to do that to some extent. You do need to make sure, and this could be done still with a very balanced approach, saying, here's what I did, the people I met with, how the decisions I made, where I stepped in to make sure this project was successful. My team did a fabulous job, but I want you to understand, what I personally contributed, where I had a big impact in driving these results. You want to make that visible to your boss, and where you can, you want to make it visible to your colleagues so that, people can see that you're getting great results. Without you actually achieving the results, no amount of confidence or appetite is going to get you that promotion. It has to be based, or it should rather be based on results. To get your foot in the door, you have to show that you have the ability to make things happen, right? That's common sense, right? So part of your action plan will be making your abilities and results visible. It will also be enlisting allies. Depending on the promotion you're looking for, it could be that in that new role or elevated position, you may be working far more closely with other colleagues. And they need to trust you, support you, feel confident in you. And so you can ask yourself, what can you do to foster a stronger relationship and greater trust with them? Now, in some arenas, some companies, people will have an open conversation about this. So it's possible your colleagues will be tapped for their input, their view on your performance, your contribution, how well, you work together. And so people can weigh in. Now, that might not be a formal process, but if somebody's putting a bug in your boss's ear that you're not a team player, or you're stumbling on your decision making, you're kind of in analysis paralysis, you're afraid to take risks, etc., things that are, maybe necessary, that all gets back to your boss. He or she takes that into consideration when thinking, are you ready for that next step? Okay. So these are the 3 strategies that are the most actionable. Do your gap analysis, evaluate your own strengths and weaknesses, and then create an action plan to address them. Now, I have done this myself, a few times, and there have been a couple of times where I have to be honest. I went through the gap analysis, looked at my talents versus the job, and then had a breakthrough that if I actually got that job, I would spend most of my time doing things I didn't enjoy. And so I backed away from that opportunity. So you're the person who's driving this goal. So you really do want to be honest with yourself on what's going to make you feel like you're getting your best results, you're happy, satisfied, fulfilled, making your best contribution, and really enjoying what you're doing. Because when you're thriving, that has a ripple effect. When you're thriving, you will get your best results, and it's going to have a ripple effect to everybody around you. So you just want to be careful about not putting yourself in a situation where you took it just for the title. Oh, it's a title, it's more money, of course I'll take it, and then realize you're in over your head. So I always encourage people to make sure they're prepared. So anyway, I hope that you found these strategies helpful. If you have a minute, I would love for you to leave a rating and a review here on iTunes. I would love to get your feedback. So thank you for listening and have a great day.